Gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. We chant Om once together. Synchronize the chanting of Om with your exhalation. Breathe in. Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahai, tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Gently open your eyes. We'll chant from verses 68 to 72 of chapter 2. Tasmadhyasya mahabaho,
Tasmadhyasya mahabaho,
nigrihitani sarvashah,
nigrihitani sarvashah,
indriyanindriyarthebhyah,
indriyanindriyarthebhyah,
tasya prajna pratisthita,
tasya prajna pratisthita,
ya nisha sarvabhutanam,
ya nisha sarvabhutanam,
tasyam jagati sanyami,
tasyam jagarti sanyami,
yasyam jagrati bhutani,
yasyam jagrati bhutani,
sa nisha pashyato muneः,
sa nisha pashyato muneः,
आपूर्यमाणमचल प्रतिष्ठम्,
आपूर्यमाणमचलप्रतिष्ठम्,
समुद्रमापः प्रविशन्ति यद्वत्,
समुद्रमापः प्रविशन्ति यद्वत्,
तद्वत् कामायं प्रविशन्ति सर्वे,
तद्वत् कामायं प्रविशन्ति सर्वे,
स शान्तिमाप्नोति न कामकामी,
स शान्तिमाप्नोति न कामकामी,
विहाय कामान् यः सर्वान्,
विहाय कामान्यः सर्वान्,
पुमांश्चरति निःस्पृहः,
पुमांश्चरति निःस्पृहः,
निर्ममो निरहङ्कारः,
निर्ममो निरहङ्कारः,
सशान्तिमधिगच्छति
सशान्तिमधिगच्छति
एषा ब्राह्मी स्थितिः पार्थ
एषा ब्राह्मी स्थितिः पार्थ
नैनां प्राप्य विमुह्यति
नैनां प्राप्य विमुह्यति
स्थित्वा स्यामन्तकालेऽपि
स्थित्वा स्यामन्तकालेऽपि
ब्रह्मनिर्वाणमृच्छति
ब्रह्मनिर्वाणमृच्छति
Hari Om, and a very good day to all of you. So last week I had given you a very important point for your sadhana, that is accepting everything and accepting everyone as it is and as each one is. We get that powerful sadhana tip when we absorb this example of a samudram, ocean. So many different rivers come and merge with the ocean. So many rivers in the sense of different colors. Some may be muddy, some may be clean. The ocean accepts whatever comes into it in an open way, without any resistance, and it maintains its level of purity. So a Sthita Prajna is one who has become like the ocean. For him, everything is acceptable. He is in a state of all acceptance. It is very difficult to understand the state. See, when it comes to spirituality, most people confuse spirituality with religion. Now, religion means belief in a particular God or a particular concept, and then you conform your thinking, your emotions, everything to that, whatever the belief is. Spirituality means going beyond belief systems and finding what the real truth is. So the Vedas actually form a part of Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma. Dharma doesn't mean religion. Dharma means principles. Sanatana means eternal principles. Those principles which are same in the past, which are same in the present, and which will continue to be the same in the future. So when it comes to religion, there is always this concept of rights and wrongs, strong concepts. Those who conform to your beliefs will become close to you, and those who do not conform to your beliefs will will be standing outside your boundary. Religion puts a boundary. It is not only religion, any belief system in the world actually puts a boundary. And you are standing inside, and those who subscribe to the same beliefs will be accommodated by your mind in that circle. And those who do not subscribe to your beliefs will be made to stand outside the circle. I'm talking of what is happening within your mind. Now, spirituality is not drawing any boundary, becoming limitless, like the ocean, like Samudram. The narrow-mindedness of human beings is so much that it not only creates division among people, among the various things in the world, but it tries to create, I would say, division between gods also. There is nothing like my God and your God. See, you may be belonging to one particular religion. Another person may be belonging to another religion. Each one will be believing in one particular form of God. But the supreme God, the formless reality, the infinite reality, is the same for everyone. You cannot put any divisions there. So even when it comes to God, who is beyond all kinds of divisions, what does the mind do? It tries to confine the concept of gods to its beliefs. Instead of you rising to the infinite level, you bring the infinite down to your level. That is much more easy. So you need to think deeply about it. Most parents, they say, I want my children to be God-fearing. It is a very, very limited concept. First of all, one person whom you do not need to fear is God. And there you are bringing in fear. You're saying God-fearing. That itself is a wrong statement. It's a very negative limitation. And then when you say God-fearing, the question comes, which God? Whatever your concept of God is. Now, you want others also to confine their minds to that concept. So if you truly want to become a Sthita Prajna, you need to rise above all these divisions. Infinite means there are no divisions. Even in mathematics they say, no, infinite cannot be divided because it's not a number like other numbers. So similarly, God or infinite cannot be divided. So if you want to become a Sthita Prajna, you need to go beyond all your belief systems. You need to learn to question your own belief systems. See, generally, you believe in those things which you have been told right from early childhood. If you had been born in another family, in another environment, and a culture, different culture, and if they had told you those things, now your belief system would be exactly the opposite. So where is your original thinking? It is more of a herd instinct. So a sadhak is one who gets these questions. What is life? What is the purpose of life? What is beyond birth and death? Why is it that everyone who is born has to die? What happens after death? Am I just a physical body, or am I someone else who is experiencing various things through this physical body? And why should I be born at all? And why should I die? See, all these questions, when you begin to seriously ask, that is when you become a seeker. The answers to these questions do not lie in any books. You may read all the scriptures in the world, but they will never ever give you a straight answer to these fundamental questions, because the moment a straight answer is given, then your quest will stop. You will no longer be a seeker. It is more of an intellectual it's an intellectual exercise. You have asked a question and now you have an answer. The answers to these questions can be really got only if you do the sadhana, develop spiritually, and you become a sthita prajna. A sthita prajna is one who has found the answers to these questions. When you ask these questions sincerely, it's not merely verbal expressions I'm talking about, but deep within you, when you ask these fundamental questions as to from where has the world been created, why this creation, who is behind all this, is there some power behind all this? So when you start asking these fundamental questions, you become a sadhak, you become a seeker. Many people are satisfied with some answers given. Somebody gives some answer, I think this particular God created the world, or this is how this happened. Then they are happy. Then they are no longer seekers. Their question itself was not so deep. A true seeker will not be satisfied with these answers. Rather, a true seeker will not look for mere intellectual answers. A true seeker will look for a guru who will be able to guide him or her through this inner path of self-discovery. So when you truly ask these questions, which means when you seek, then you are a seeker, you are a sadhak. You get that motivation to do sadhana, the spiritual practice. Otherwise, when you don't have this quest within you, you are happy with some mere rituals or with mere intellectual answers, just a few external practices here and there, and you are content with that. Most people confuse that with spirituality. Just because a person is going to a temple or any place of worship on a daily basis, just because a person is doing certain rituals on a daily basis, doesn't make that person spiritual. Please understand this. When does a person become spiritual? Only when he or she becomes a sadhak, a seeker. And when do you become a seeker? When you start seeking the highest, when you start questioning the basics of life. That quest was called mumukshatva in Sanskrit. Mumukshatva means an intense desire to liberate oneself from this thraldom of finite existence. A person who has mumukshatva is called a mumukshu. So a sadhak becomes a mumukshu. Actually, if you see it very technically, mumukshu and sadhak are one and the same, just the emphasis is different. A mumukshu is one who has these questions, who is seeking. A sadhak is one who starts doing the sadhana because of the seeking, because he wants to find the answers. See, if you have all the questions and if you don't do anything about it, then also you are not a sadhak. Actually, if you truly have this quest, then you will automatically start doing the sadhana, because this quest will not allow you to sleep peacefully in ignorance. See, contentment can be of two types. When you gain the full wisdom, that is true contentment. You get true contentment. When you are in full ignorance also, you are blissfully unaware. It's a tamasic kind of contentment. So when you become a mumukshu, that is when you get this quest, now that is not going to allow you to be content with ignorance. The seeking will push you, will drive you to find the answers. So generally people compromise with either intellectual answers or some emotional beliefs or some physical ritualistic practices. What do I mean by they compromise with that? Having received some intellectual answers, if a person stops seeking, then he or she has compromised. Having received some emotional beliefs, if a person stops seeking, then he is no longer a seeker. Similarly, the ritualistic practices, mechanically, without any question, if a person just keeps doing those things and is happy with that, that is tamasic contentment. That person has not yet moved to the realm of spirituality. He may be talking about God, he may be doing things externally which may look spiritual, but he has not yet become truly spiritual. So you need to become a mumukshu and a sadhak. Sadhak actually both mean one and the same. They're two sides of the same coin. So mumukshatva is a part of a sadhak. So once you get this deep quest, now you get that power, you get that inner motivation to do the sadhana which the Guru gives you. Since the mumukshatva has reduced today, that is why so many other benefits are also given. See, when you do the sadhana, you will gain, not only will you move towards the infinite, that is the highest benefit, but you will also find that many other the problems will get solved, many other unsolved issues which you may be having may become fine, the relative goals will get fulfilled. So why does a Guru teach those aspects of the sadhana also? Actually, if you take it from a pure spiritual point of view, that may not be required. Yet the Guru does teach, because the mumukshatva is not strong with the student. If the mumukshatva is 100%, if the seeking is 100%, then the Guru will not waste any time. He will directly give the highest empowerment, highest diksha, highest initiation, and give, push the student to experience the infinite. When the mumukshatva is weak, there are always chances of the student stopping the sadhana. A lot of preparation is required. So what does the Guru do? he keeps motivating the students by teaching the relative aspects of the sadhanas, so that as the student gets the relative benefits, he or she will be focused on doing the sadhana, the spiritual practice. And when you do the sadhana sincerely, not only will it give you these worldly benefits, but it will purify you, it will purify your mind, it will purify all your karmas. And when you get purified, that is, the more you get purified, you will find that the more will be your mumukshatva. Your seeking will become more intense. When a student comes to a guru, the guru first sees what is the level of mumukshatva in that student. According to the level of mumukshatva alone, the guru gives the empowerment, the guru gives the sadhana. When Adi Shankara met his guru, he had the highest mumukshatva. So the guru straightaway gave him the highest empowerment. The other students who were with the guru for many, many years, they actually became a little jealous. We have been putting so much of effort for so long, but when this new boy came, the guru gave him the highest empowerment, which was not given to us. They didn't understand the concept fully. The guru has no partiality. He treats everyone equally. He views everyone equally. But when it comes to external treatment, the treatment has to be different according to the level of each student. You can't teach a first grade student the same thing which you can teach a third grade student. That doesn't mean the teacher likes the third grade student more and loves the first grade student less and all that. That is the external treatment. So when we talk of the samudram, the ocean, the first thing, as you absorb the energy, I'm slowly making you absorb this energy of this word samudram. I'm like the ocean. So when you begin to absorb that energy, what will happen? All your divisions will start vanishing. You will start becoming truly spiritual. First, you will become a sadhak. That is the mumukshu. The mumukshatva will come to you. You will become a mumukshu, and then you will become a sadhak by doing the sadhana, and you will consistently maintain your sadhana, which alone can transform you into a sthita prajna. If a person does not have any mumukshatva, and when he approaches the guru, he may just pass the buck. He may not give any serious answer. He may not give any serious sadhana. If he has the time, he may just suggest a few things here and there, which will help that person get whatever limited thing which he or she is seeking. That is why whenever people send requests, they want to meet me regarding it may be regarding some problem also. I always say, attend the Sunday discourses for a few weeks. Because if you don't attend these sessions, you will genuinely not be able to understand the spirit of whatever I may say. It is not because of lack of understanding, it is because of, that is, it's not because of the lack of the capacity to understand, it is because the frequency will not match. When you attend these sessions, and if you put in effort, see, if you attend these sessions, you will be forced to put an effort in the yogic approach. So when you do that for a few weeks, you will become a mumukshu. The mumukshatva will start growing within you. Unless and until the mumukshatva comes, your depth will not increase. And when your depth is not there, when the depth is not there, you go to the master and ask for a solution. What solution can he give? Even if he says do the sadhana, you will not do the sadhana in a deep way. That is why these sessions themselves are a part of your sadhana, because it goes on increasing your depth. If you do the Yoga Sankirtan sadhana on your own, for you to increase your depth will take many, many years. That is where a guru comes in. The guru's work is to go on increasing the depth of a student. The more deep the student is, the more he or she is going to grow spiritually when the sadhana is done. So Samudram, ocean, is reaching that infinite depth. So right from beginning, you need to focus on increasing the depth. So what do we mean by all acceptance? There will be a lot of confusion if you don't understand this principle properly. This is a principle given not at the action level. This is a sadhana practice which has been given for the mind. When you meet, see, when you go through life, there are three things which you encounter. The first is people. There are many people with whom you need to move. Number two, objects. See, when he says the objects of desire enter, that is not the exact translation. It means whatever you desire. If you desire a person, then philosophically that is also called your object of desire. So here object doesn't mean inanimate objects alone. So number one, you may have to interact with people. Number two, you will get a lot of objects. Number three, situations, good situations or bad situations. Now in all these three, this sadhana has to be practiced. So last week I stopped with saying, start accepting things as they are, start accepting people as they are. Now I am giving you more depth to that sadhana. I am sure all of you would have reflected on that point last week, and you would have put in some effort to practice it in your life. When that is done, then you are ready to absorb more energy. That is, you're ready to go into more depth. So these are the three kinds of kamaha. See, he's using the word kamaha, objects of desire. So don't confuse it with the English word objects, which refers to only the inanimate objects. So there are three kinds of kamaha. One is the people, second the objects, the inanimate objects, third the situations. So whenever you interact with people, how should you be? You should be like the ocean. You should not judge people. Whenever you judge a person as good or bad, then you either become attached emotionally or you start hating that person. You will fall into one of the two extremes. It is always said that you should shower unconditional love to everyone whom you meet. Whether you meet you meet people or not, unconditional love should gush forth from you. You can never ever give a person unconditional love when you are judging that person as good or bad. That is why I said practice the sadhana of accepting the person as he or she is. That is a powerful tool which will help you to build unconditional love. A Sthita Prajna is one who has infinite love towards everyone. He never ever judges. See, whenever you meet a person, you immediately judge. That person is like this, that person is like that. Now, you may get confused because even last week I think I mentioned you should learn to assess people and then accept them as they are. So what is the difference between assessment and judgment? I'll explain that a little bit today. I'll give you some pointers based on which you can gain more clarity regarding this. See, these principles which I'm giving you, they will genuinely transform the quality of your relationships if you sincerely practice this. So the difference between assessment and judgment is, in assessment you assess the qualities of a person. You say, this person has this quality, this person has that quality. So there is a positive quality, there is a negative quality. This is assessment. In judgment, you pass a judgment over the person. You mix the quality and the person together. So when you assess, you say, this person has, supposing let us say a person is a highly, he's got a negative quality, he's very rude. Then you say, this person has this quality of rudeness. This is assessment. When you say this person is rude, not verbally saying, I'm saying how you consider, inside, we are only dramatizing that. When you judge the person as rude, it means you have now joined the quality of rudeness and that person and you permanently brand that person. Branding happens. You are no longer open-minded. That is why if you see Jesus Christ, he said, hate the sin, not the sinner. Means he's saying separate the quality, the sin, from the person who has committed the sin. So how do you separate that? When he is saying you are the ocean, you are God, everyone is God, that God principle is present in each and every person. So no person is inherently bad. Then it amounts to saying God is bad, So everyone has spiritual potential. They may be having certain negative qualities. It may be due to wrong guidance, it may be due to some wrong karmas. That is, the causes may be varied. The moment you see it that way, then you will no longer judge others. You will no longer brand them. Rather, you will start looking at everyone with so much of love and compassion. This is what Buddha said. Have compassion to everyone. So if a person has a very negative quality, now you may wonder, how can I have compassion towards that person? He is actually a nice person, but he has acquired this negative quality due to which he is suffering. It's a disease. When you see a deceased person, don't you get that compassion? This is an inner disease of the mind. So a lot of compassion automatically comes. So when you assess people, that is very good. You need, see, in the name of not judging, in the name of all acceptance, you should not become ignorant. You should not become very foolish where you don't even know what is right and what is wrong. You know, when you interact with a person, if that person is trying to harm you, if you don't even know that that person is trying to harm you, that is a state of tamas, ignorance. We are not talking of that. That's why I told you last week, acceptance is not a weakness. It is not a weak quality. Actually, it gives you tremendous strength. You can accept someone as he or she is only when you assess. So when you interact with people, the first thing you should do is assess them, assess their qualities. When I say assess them, it means assess their qualities. In the later chapters, he'll be talking of gunas, the concept of gunas means qualities, which our great ancient masters have given, is something fascinating because it helps you to assess people without getting into a judgment. Whenever you assess someone, which means you assess the qualities, then you get a clue. You get a way by which you can relate to that person. If a person has a negative quality, now you immediately relate in a particular way so that your goal can be fulfilled, so that that relationship can be maintained if it's required. Whenever you judge someone, you will not be able to relate with that person. Rather, you will go on complaining. See, however justified your complaints may be, because all your complaints, supposing you say that person is being very rude to me, yes, you are factually right only. But when you complain, what are you achieving? Just think about it. Is that person suffering or are you suffering? You make a mistake, you suffer, that is one thing. But if you are suffering because of other people's negative behavior or negative qualities, then your situation becomes worse. You become more weak. So spirituality means strength. In order to get that inner strength, what these great masters are saying is that first you should get to that state where you are not affected by the qualities of other people. How can you maintain your peace? See, because the central theme of these two verses, that is this verse and the next verse, is Shantihi, peace. So what are all the factors which can disturb that peace? We are analyzing. So that you can get into that state of peace. So one of the things which disturbs your peace is judgment. So when you judge a person, then you start complaining. You are unable to relate with that person. When you assess a person, this person behaves in a rude way. Now you learn how to deal with that person. Okay, that person talks in a rude way. Now what should I do, or what should I say? How should I give that person the message so that that is not done? You will find your way. See, there is no standard solution for this because each one's psychology is different. You know, long back, when I say long back, I'm talking of almost 20 years back. There was a man who came and met me. He was a very rich person, rich in terms of money, you know. And he said, "Sir, I have a problem that is regarding my son. He's a teenager." And I said, "What is the problem?" Is that he is into heavy smoking. And I've shouted at him, I've tried talking to him in a nice way, every method I've tried, but he is not stopping smoking. And half the time, 90% of the time, he is smoking without my knowledge. 10% I find out, and that itself is agitating me. So the remaining 90%, if I come to find out, I don't know what will happen. So this is bothering me so much. And then he said, in our family, where, my brothers also have sons, but they are all such good boys, It's only my son who is so bad. See, this is the judgment. He is judging his own son as a bad boy. Now, the moment he judges that way, thereafter, his capacity to relate to his own son became nil. Any method he may have tried, but it wouldn't have worked, because anything which he had tried, it had come from hatred, not from love. So I explained to him that, listen, I think you're being too judgmental. I asked him one simple question. Is your son a bad boy, a negative boy, or is he a good boy who has acquired a negative quality? There is a world of a difference between these two. Now it made him think. He said, he has acquired this negative quality. Then why are you saying he is a bad boy? You should say he has developed a harmful quality. So he asked me for tips. Now what should I tell him? I said, it's very difficult. I cannot give you some tips off the cuff like that. We'll see. When there is an opportunity to meet him, we'll see. So what happened is, this man had invited me for lunch. That is, there was some program which he had organized, a lecture series. So after that, every day we used to have food at his place. So in one such, when we were having lunch, the boy was also there. And this man was, we all were having lunch together. And this man was very anxious that I should give some advice to his son, So he was looking at me, and so he was so anxious that his body language, everything became so obvious, That was disturbing the whole setup. So then what happened is, the boy got up and went to his room. Immediately this man turned around and said, "Sir, you never gave him any advice." I said, first you require advice, You're spoiling the whole thing. You're making it too obvious. So drop this anxiety. This anxiety has anyway not helped you. So be relaxed. So before I left his place, he said, I'll just show you around. Room by room he was just showing, and there was his son's room. So I told him, when I see your son's room, you better go outside saying that you got a phone call or some work or something. I will talk to him. So when I went to his son's room, his son also just welcomed me, and he said, sir, this is my room. It's a very nice compact room you have. In the wall he had stuck posters of his favorite tennis star. And that time, Andre Agassi, he was a great player, and so he had his huge pictures stuck on the wall. So when I looked at that, I said, oh, you're a fan of Andre Agassi? He said, yes. And then he asked me with a lot of excitement, so do you also like tennis? I said, yeah, it's a very good sport. So the boy became very friendly, and see, we have to build a relationship for any, whenever you want to do good to someone, first you need to build a good relationship. It should not be an advice. So he genuinely opened up, and we started talking a lot about tennis. And then he asked me, so do you like Andre Agassi? I said, yes, he's a great player. And then in passing, in the total conversation was about 15 minutes. In that, in passing, I just mentioned that, the coach of Andre Agassi has put certain rules which Agassi follows. And that is before a major tournament. That is, let us say he's going to play the Wimbledon or he's going to play the US Open. Before for few months and immediately after the tournament is over, and of course during the tournament, he doesn't attend any parties. He is very much focused. There is a discipline, He has to eat a particular kind of food. He has to practice for so many hours. So all that he does, discipline. So this boy was fascinated to hear this, because he only saw the glamour aspect. See, once you become an achiever, there are some glamour also associated with that. But he never ever identified the hard work which Agassi had put in. It's not only Agassi, any achiever in the world in any field will be very disciplined. Especially being a sports person, if a sports person is disciplined, then alone he or she can be in the top for a long time. There are many people who have come to the top and then they got into drugs, they got into alcohol, this, that, and they lose that position. That has happened. So when I mentioned this to him, that inspired him so much. And the amazing thing is, from the very next day, he stopped smoking. Nobody told him. I never ever told him don't smoke and all that. His father was so overjoyed, but he never understood what happened. He even till date, his father thinks that I gave his son a lot of advice and told him the ill effects of smoking and all that. Nothing. I warned his father. I told him, don't ever ask him what I told him, because I actually didn't tell him anything. He was unable to believe it because he was not able to understand the principle. So when you judge a person, it could be your own son, it could be your own spouse, someone who is very close to you. I gave this example to say that when you judge, you will lose the capacity to relate with someone who is very close to you also. So if you want your relationships to flourish, then you should practice this. That is, assess people, assess their qualities so that you will know how to deal with them. If I had told him this, you have to understand the psychology of your son and talk accordingly, now he wouldn't have been able to practice all that because he was so strong in his judgment. And when the son stopped smoking, he said, now he has become a good boy, I said, very difficult. You need to do a lot of sadhana, you attend my lectures, and slowly you need to absorb this quality. So as a sadhak, from this moment onwards, you follow this simple formula. Whenever you interact with people, learn to assess their qualities and accept them as they are. When you do that, whenever you accept, your mind will become peaceful. And since you have assessed, you will know how to deal with them. This is very important for you to maintain your peace of mind. The next aspect is when you acquire objects in the world, either the objects may come to you or you may go and buy objects or you may acquire them. Practice the same thing. And understand whatever objects which you are acquiring, they have certain limitations. So accept things as they are. Then there will be no stress. The same thing with regard to the third aspect also, situations in life. You should learn to accept situations as they are. So this formula of acceptance can be practiced in all these three aspects of life: people, objects and situations. And whenever you assess, and accept, you will be in a position to deal, whether it is with the person or whether it is with the object or whether it is with respect to situations. I gave you this example of this pandemic. Yes, during this pandemic, this is how the situation is. You need to learn to accept it. A psychologist has observed that more than the COVID virus, the lockdowns have affected the people more. In the sense, the minds of the people. The virus may attack the body, but the lockdown and the work from home and all that has affected the minds of the people. She says that people are losing their ability to relate with each other. It has increased a lot of negative qualities like aggression, frustration. So the solution to that is this only. When you assess situations and accept realities as they are, then your expectations will be in line with the realities. You will not have your own set of expectations unrelated to what the realities of life are. Then you will be able to maintain your shanti, peace of mind. So acceptance doesn't mean being passive at the action level. Actually, only when you accept situations as they are, when you accept people as they are, you will get that strength and clarity to be able to deal with the person, with the people, to be able to deal with the situations. Otherwise, you will be an eternal complainer. A sadhak never complains. A sadhak always looks for solutions. So becoming an ocean means getting into a state of all acceptance. Practically, you assess and accept. Never get into a state of judgment. The more you call people as good or bad, the less you will be able to relate with them. Spirituality is not isolating yourself from others. It is in identifying with others and generating a lot of unconditional love and compassion towards one and all. That is true bhakti. Bhakti yoga is a practice of unconditional love. And that comes if you absorb this aspect of that word samudram, that is all acceptance. In the 12th chapter, Lord Krishna gives the 35 qualities of a bhakta, a devotee. See, generally, you may say, I am a devotee of God. But here, Krishna clearly gives you 35 qualities, and he says, when are you qualified to say you're a devotee of God? It is if you have these qualities. And the very first quality is adveshta sarva bhutana, means not hating anyone. Adveshta. And the very second quality is maitreya, being friendly with everyone. Radiating that energy of unconditional love and friendliness where people are comfortable with you. So whenever you divide, whenever you judge, then you start hating someone and you start getting attached to some people. It could be even in the name of God. Supposing you say Krishna alone is God, Rama alone is God, Shiva alone is God, Vishnu alone is God. It could be any concept. Once you get fixed in that, then if you say Krishna alone is God, whenever you meet a person who is a devotee of Shiva, you will not be able to generate love towards that person. You will have hatred. So even in the name of God, people have only created divisions, whereas the true wisdom actually unites everyone. So you should develop that vastness in your perception. No judgments whatsoever, but not becoming foolish. You assess everyone very, very clearly. You assess the qualities. See, this was the life of Lord Krishna. He always wanted to do good to others, but at the same time, he was not a weak person. He had assessed each one's qualities. So, as the ocean remains unmoved, samudram, you should become like the ocean. Not a weak person. Unfortunately, this quality of acceptance has been understood as a very passive quality. People think that if I accept now, I'll not be able to act in the world. I'll always be the sufferer. See, spirituality means you neither cause suffering to others, nor do you allow anybody else to cause suffering to you. Both sides, very important. Where you need to be stern, you need to be stern. The right balance is what as a sadhak you should try and achieve. Most people who have good qualities, who are good, they become very passive and they are preyed upon by negative people who have negative qualities. Why? Because they are passive. That's what happened in the Mahabharata. Pandavas were basically good people, Yudhishthira, but he was highly passive. So Shakuni, Duryodhana, all of them took advantage of that. Krishna was also a good person, but nobody could take advantage of him. Everything which a Sthita Prajna does is always for the good of the other person. Sometimes Krishna was very kind externally. Sometimes he was very stern. When he killed Shishupala, it is said that everyone who got killed by Krishna, whether it was his uncle Kamsa or Shishupala, they all got moksha, liberation. When he was a small baby, the Putana, she was a demon actually, and she came in the guise of a beautiful woman, and she tried to kill Krishna by feeding him. And it is said that when Krishna, when she tried to feed Krishna, he sucked away all the karmas. The story is that she died. It is a very, very meaningful incident. All her, the negativities, she as a demon died. That is the power of a master. Sometimes he may be externally harsh. Sometimes he may be externally kind. The methods do not matter, but it is all always aimed for the benefit of humanity, because it is backed by unconditional love. So you should also become so deep like an ocean, where you get into the state of all acceptance. Nothing in the world should disturb you. Your peace is within you. How can you allow anything outside to disturb you? The moment you allow any factor to disturb you, then you become a weak person. You are no longer an ocean. You moved away from the state of samudram. As I told you, if you make a mistake and if you suffer, that is easy to solve. But if you are suffering because some other person is making some mistake, then it becomes very difficult to solve. The solution is by applying this principle of all acceptance. So you do this homework for today, that is the sadhana. Divide your life into three things, the world into three things: people, objects, situations. Now, among these three, just make a list. Who are the people who are disturbing me most? When I say who are the people who are disturbing me most, the first thing will be, this person, because he is talking like this to me, he is behaving like this. Yes, it's okay. Even if you're passing judgments, it's fine. Just write them down. What are the objects which I am not happy with today? What are the situations which are creating a lot of frustration within me today? You make a list. Just one or two are more than enough in each of this classification, Now, apply this powerful sadhana there. Okay, I am affected by this person. How am I viewing that person? First, close your eyes and see the judgment playing within you. Now, instead of judgment, now apply this. Let me assess this person. Okay, this person has some frustration within him, due to which he is being rude. He is behaving in this particular way. This is his nature, the quality, guna. Guna means quality. And then I accept him as he is. Immediately the ego will put this question: if you accept him as he is, you will suffer. No. It is because of non-acceptance that you are suffering. See, the ego plays so many tricks. One of the tricks which the ego plays is to try and convince the mind that all the wrong things, all the harmful things are good for you. So you should never fall into that trap. All along you have been judging. Has that given you peace of mind? Yet there will be a fear to accept, whereas there will be no fear to judge. And then you keep saying, I want peace, I want peace. From where will you get peace? You will have to do the sadhana for that. So I accept that person, whoever is affecting you, I accept that person as he or she is. If you feel that person has done some harm to you, I forgive that person. I forgive that person for whatever he or she has done. I accept him as he is. Practice that. You will be amazed to see that your mind will start calming down. Similarly with objects. Similarly with situations. Wherever there is a lot of frustration, now find out. You will find that you are not accepting realities in that situation. So I accept the situation as it is, in a wholehearted way, like the ocean. I am the ocean and I accept this particular situation which is causing so much of disturbance to me today. I accept it wholeheartedly as it is. And then you assess, this is what the situation is. Now what should I do in order to get my desired results? Automatically the solutions will come to you. So in today's meditation, I will intensify this acceptance, I'll install these things in your deeper minds so that you will find it very easy to practice. So today's session was so powerful because I found that you were absorbing this point about acceptance last week. So that is why I gave you more depth, so many more dimensions to that. So with this, you should be able to transform your life for the better. Okay, so before the meditation, I'll take up one or two questions. This is a question which has been sent by a sadhak. This is not a question, actually she has shared her wonderful experience, but I have some points to make which will be very useful to other sadhaks also. So dearest Yogeshri, Hari Om, I wanted to share with you an incredible experience which happened today. I had been feeling disturbed by news I heard last week where a visually impaired elderly man had saved rupees 65,000 by begging to help him in his old age. But he did not know about demonetization and did not realize the notes weren't valid anymore. I felt extremely saddened by this as I realized how difficult it would have been to save that amount and how distraught he must have felt to realize his hard-earned savings won't be able to help him in old age, even though he had it. I remembered you saying, sir, that the sadhana we do will impact 7 generations, previous and future. So I decided to send a portion of my sadhana to the universe, asking for someone to donate the 65k money to the old man. And just now I came across the news that someone had donated the amount to him today. I feel so emotional to know that the universe took into consideration my request and helped the person in need. Thank you, Yogeshri, for imparting this wisdom to us, which enables us to make ours and others' lives better. Hari Om. So this is a very nice experience which she has shared. Now, there are 2-3 things which I want to mention here. The first thing is the desire to help others is a very good one. When you start identifying with others and start wishing that their lives become better, it is a sign that you are absorbing this higher wisdom. See, when you are selfish, when you're all the time thinking only about yourself, you will not be sensitive to others at all. As you gain this wisdom, you will start identifying with others. So that is a very positive thing. Now, you mentioned a couple of things. One is you have said that I remembered you saying, sir, that the sadhana we do will impact 7 generations previous and future. That was said in the context of your blood relations. That is, see, 7 generations means we are talking of the immediate family and those who are related to you, which means your parents, your spouse, not only blood relations, those who are karmically related to you, your spouse, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, great-grandmother. So 7 generations that side, 7 generations down the line. So when you do your sadhana, all your ancestors, the souls of your ancestors will get a portion of that energy, and those who will be born in the future in your family line, in your line, will also get benefited. Your spouse will get benefited, your children, because you are not alone. It's a group soul, so soul group as we call it. So you're karmically related to many people. So they will also receive a portion of those benefits, the portion of that energy. That is why I even mentioned to that person, Shiva, who had asked the question, can I register, my mother has passed away, can I register her for the Prana Tattva level 1? I said, no, don't do that. But anyway, when you take the empowerment, your ancestors, if your parents are no more, their souls will receive a portion of that energy. So that has nothing to do with this, number 1. Number 2, you have also mentioned that I decided to send a portion of my sadhana to the universe, asking for someone to donate the 65k money. Now this is something which you should avoid. See, your wish to help someone is wonderful, but to start sharing the fruits of your sadhana, that is to bring that intention to share the sadhana which you are doing with others, is not good. I'll tell you why. The primary aim of the sadhana is to evolve spiritually and become one with the infinite. This is number 1. Number 2, when you are having only, let us say, 100 rupees. Now if you give away that 100 rupees, now you will be left with 0. So what is suggested in spirituality is you go on reinvesting. 100 rupees of money, I am equating it to the energy which you gain through your sadhana. So you go on doing the sadhana, keep reinvesting, so that 100 becomes 1000, 1000 becomes millions, millions become billions. So when you are a multi-billionaire, even if you share 1 million or 2 millions with others, your capacity to help will never reduce. If you are having only 1 million and if you give away that 1 million, now you lose your capacity to do good to yourself and to others. So wishing someone is different. But actually materializing something for someone is not advised at all. So this is from your personal point of view. Another important thing is, each one has his or her own soul agenda. Now you should not interfere with another person's karmas. When you wish good for someone, that is not interfering with another person's karmas. But when you start materializing things for others by doing the sadhana, see, some people try to visualize for others. That is very wrong. Each one has to do his or her own sadhana. Or when you try to give away the fruits of your sadhana to someone, then you will be left with zero. Your capacity to help will go away. So that should never be done. In spirituality, we, as he's saying, we should become like an ocean. You should become like a banyan tree where you give shade to others. Just your presence will start giving shade to others. You don't need to put any special effort in that direction. So the emotion is very nice. Your identification is good. But the moment you say that a portion of my sadhana should go to him, it is as good as you are doing the sadhana for that person. No? That is never good. That is interfering with that person's karmas. You really don't know why certain things are happening to a person. What are his or her karmas? All that you don't know. And secondly, whenever you interfere with the karmas of another person, unnecessarily you are inviting trouble to yourself. So my request is, share, build a spirit of sharing things with others, worldly things with others. But when it comes to sadhana, that is meant for you and you alone. So the main goal of sadhana is to become one with the infinite. Then the relative benefits are, keeping relative goals in your life and materializing them. Even in the Prana Tattva level 1, your materialization capacity will increase, because I'm going to give you empowerment on the aura expansion. And when your Pranavayu aura expands and you visualize, the goals will get fructified faster. But you should be very careful. I'm putting this as a rule for all the participants who are going to attend that. Please don't use that to start materializing things for others. This is given only to materialize your goals. If you want, you can help others through your actions, through your emotions. But you should not do a sadhana for others. This is very important. So you should become like a multi-billionaire with respect to spirituality. That is why I am not teaching healing to how to heal others and all that. Why am I not? I've received a lot of requests, but I am avoiding that right now because more purification, more maturity should come. See, to offer healing to someone without interfering with their karmas is a subtle art. Only when you become a master you will know that. Otherwise, in the name of healing, you will interfere with other person's karma. You will unnecessarily take up those karmas. It will all cause problems, In this case, there is nothing to worry because it was done more out of ignorance, and already the healing has been given to you so that you are protected. But keep it as a rule in your life. So use these powers which are being given to you to materialize your goals, and then using your actions, you put in effort to do good to others. This is very important. It is good that you shared this experience here, because the Prana Tattva empowerment is also coming. See, when we did the 5-day finite to infinite course, after that course a lady had shared her experience, where she said that her uncle was bedridden. He was in the ICU in the hospital. So when I had asked, there was a session, if you remember, I had asked you to visualize your goals. I was invoking the higher healing Shakti so that the goals will get fructified. She visualized that her uncle, he was having throat cancer. So she visualized that all the pain of uncle goes away and all that. But from the very next day, she developed a sore throat and a lot of pain in the throat. So she asked me, why did I develop this? Then I said, what did you visualize? This is what I visualized. I said, no. You have the right to visualize for yourself, but you have no right to visualize for others. Because what is your uncle's soul agenda? That we need to find out first. Then how can I help him? I said, you talk to your auntie, or you get a copy of the Yoga Sankirtan for him and play that loudly there. So let him receive the vibrations and let him get healed. So she was so intelligent, she immediately understood whatever point I was saying. So this is so important. You all should practice that. See, we are acquiring, whenever you come for empowerment, you'll be acquiring a lot of powers. Use it to manifest your goals and to develop yourself, and also to help others by acting, by putting in effort, not by doing the sadhana. Okay, so this you keep in mind. Now we'll do the meditation. As I told you, I'm going to install the deeper principles of acceptance, becoming more of an ocean. So sit in a comfortable position. Be very, very relaxed, Relax your mind completely. Gently close your eyes. Breathe deeply. With every breath, I'm becoming more and more divine. with every breath, I am becoming more and more deep. I am like the ocean, Samudram. I am in a state of total acceptance. I accept everyone as he or she is. I accept everything as it is. I accept every situation as it is. From this moment onwards, I choose to assess people, things, and situations I choose to always look for solutions. I am one with the infinite. Offer your gratitude to God Supreme. Offer your gratitude to your Guru and all the holy masters. Slowly come back. Wriggle your fingers, your toes, rub your palms together to create a warmth. Cup your eyes with your palms. Gently rub your eyes, cheeks, forehead, top of the head, back of the head and neck. Slowly open your eyes. Welcome back. So we had a very deep session today. The idea of studying all this is not to become a scholar of the Bhagavad Gita. It's not to become a Pandit, but it is to become, truly become like an ocean. It's to rise beyond all divisions that limit you. You have so much of capacity within you. It has all been lying dormant till now. And now that you have got this opportunity to do the sadhana using yogic approach, this is the best chance for you to open up yourself and go deep within you and become one with the infinite. Okay. So many people have asked questions about the prana tattva, about what is the aura, what is the energy field, and will some kriyas be taught and all that, what dress we should wear while attending the program. See, regarding what is aura, what is energy field, all that, there is no point in my giving you a short answer here. That is why the 22-day program is there. One whole week will be devoted towards the pranavayu aura. So many powers will be activated within you. So to just give some answer just like that, that's not going to benefit you in any way. As far as the dress to wear and all that, you don't worry. If there is anything like that, you will be informed. I think already the group has been formed for the registered participants, and so any instructions will be provided to you. So as of now, there is nothing, any comfortable dress for you, because yes, I will be making you do a few kriyas, but they will be very subtle, not gross kriyas. So for that, basic comfortable clothing should be fine. Certain very, very powerful breathing techniques will be taught to you. Not mere teaching, it's not a technique. Empowerment will be given to you. So it is very important that you use all the powers which will be activated, which will be awakened to materialize your goals in life. That is why I had mentioned that point while reading out that experience which lady had shared with us. So all the sadhaks, please make a note of it. Only registered participants should attend the course. Otherwise, if they don't get the empowerment and they merely attend the course, the energy will not be handleable and it may create problems also. And this time the energy is going to be very high, and the post sadhana material which will be made available to all the participants is also going to be extremely powerful. So all that is getting ready. So from your side, do the preparatory sadhana sincerely. Dr. Anushka had mentioned about having the urge to do the preparatory sadhana more than once, but since I had mentioned, she is restricting it to once. You do it once a day, that is more than enough in the morning. In the night, I have asked you to do the other practice. There is a reason for that, because on one side I am giving the healing, on the other side I am making you do a certain process which will be very helpful while doing the course. And your regular sadhana also, the Yoga Sankirtan sadhana, that you continue doing. In case you're doing the 22-day course, I think from next week, I had asked you to give a week gap. In case you've been doing that, then you don't need to do your Yoga Sankirtan sadhana. Okay. So we'll conclude here. I'll meet you in the next session. Thank you very much. Hari Om.